All right, we are live. Thank you, everybody, for joining. A happy Wednesday at lunchtime EST. I keep calling it lunchtime, but then I realize other people are in other time zones. So I'm sorry that I'm selfish about the EST that way. Um, Thanks all for joining us. This is Recruiting EQ, episode number 20. Somehow I've already squeezed in 20 episodes this year. That's crazy. And this is our month end sales panel. So last month we tried a first one. This is our second month end sales panel. First one was super successful. I'm very happy to have all of these lovely guests here with me. And I'd like to give a quick start by just sort of going around the room. And if you guys can please introduce yourselves and kind of a little bit about what you do. Obviously, I understand maybe we don't want to give away everything about what we do for these things, but whatever you'd like to share so we get a sense of where you're coming from. All of our lovely attendees would love to hear it. Let's start round. I don't know if we're all even seeing each other in the same order, but shall we start with, let's start with Shannon and go
All
around.
right. Yeah, sure. So hi, I'm Shannon Roach. I'm the founder and CEO of Recruition Talent Services. We're a talent advisory, executive search, and technology recruitment firm. We serve North America, and our positioning is definitely trying to stay front of the curve as far as emerging technologies, but we do build out entire businesses. And then, of course, just recently, we've started to get into the talent advisory practice, which is to establish internal talent acquisition competencies in client organizations.
Amazing. Thank
All.
you, Shannon. Who wants to go next?
I'll go next.
Yes. Rick, let's do this.
Yes, my name is Rick Cristiano. I'm with Empower Professionals, the director of recruiting sales, and our organization primarily has focused traditionally on IT recruitment. However, in the recent future here, we have expanded our horizons into other markets such as the accounting, finance, design services, architectural firms as well. We have a USA presence in the Asias as well in India, and are looking to expand our presences in the South America, which I can get into future with nearshoring talent. That's us in a high-level overview.
Awesome. Thanks, Rick.
I guess I'll go.
Go for it, Rob. Let's do this.
So I'm Rob Thorney, and I am the founder and principal of Everyday People. And we started in 2020 as a result of I was previously managing and leading a large offshore recruiting team, and just saw a lot of opportunity to improve on the business model. So that's exactly what I did. Instead of complaining about the business model, I decided to put my money where my mouth was, and I registered and incorporated my own company in India. And our focus is entirely on eliminating the challenges that I ran into when I was leading a team. So in other words, I was finding myself between our users onshore in Canada and the US, complaining about this wasn't good, that wasn't good, and I was constantly dealing in the middle of that. And essentially, the business model that we put together leverages the highest quality talent in terms of offshore recruiters, self-management models. So there's a lot to it, but that's the core of what we do.
Thanks, Rob. MJ,
I'll go next. I am not in the recruiting industry. I am in the tech industry. My name is Marie-Jo Saint-Lejour, or MJ for short. I am an account director at a large CRM company. And I've been in the technology space for approximately 10 years now. Works from customer success to solution engineering, and I've finally joined the dark side of sales in the last 4 years.
Yes.
So that's me. I'm based out of Vancouver, British Columbia, so I've got a lot of knowledge from the Western Canadian side of the business.
Yes, from Quebec to Toronto to Vancouver. So you've seen a lot of the country from a work perspective. And Rob and Shannon and I are all in Toronto. I apologize, kind of a Toronto-centric panel this time. I'll have to mix it up more, but I'm glad we got Pittsburgh and Vancouver here. Is it raining where you are, Marie-Jose? Is it just...
It's always threatening to rain, right? But we've had some very nice days lately. Today's a little bit overcast, but it's okay.
Okay, fair. That's good. It's good to know that the predictable cloudy weather is the same. Okay, so just in terms of format, we are, for anyone who's watching this, we are not on LinkedIn. We're in a third-party thing, so we don't see everything that happens there. If you would like to comment and/or bring anything up on the topics that we're saying, that is very much the point of all this, right? So participation is great. In fact, we've had lots of participation in our past couple of episodes. So do please comment, but in the interest of privacy, we are not going to be reading out your names. So don't be shy. We don't want to get anybody in trouble. This is getting recorded. You're supposed to be at work right now. What are you even doing here? I'm kidding. I'm glad you're here. But we won't get anyone in trouble. So yeah, we will read out the comments when there's a lull in the conversation and respond to them without naming you. And your name and profile will not be on the recording. So that being said, I'm very excited to have a chat about this. There's a lot of juicy conversations I get into day in, day out with owners of staffing agencies primarily, and even in my personal life. Personally, I talk to a lot of people who are in digital strategy, marketing, who own different kinds of tech firms. It's been a crazy market, I think we can all say, right? Especially since COVID. Generally, I think we see that it's doom and gloom is what everybody's still talking about. Rob, you mentioned this earlier. I don't really see that being the case anymore, at least not for the past couple of months. But a weird, interesting thing happening in my purview. But just as a first market check, what's hot, what's not, kind of go around the room kind of thing. Anybody who wants to start first, what are you guys seeing out there right now in terms of the market from like a sales and BD perspective? Hit it, Shannon.
All right. So yeah, the conversations I'm having, obviously everybody wants to play with AI. We seem to be stuck in this POC doom cycle of companies trying to race to leverage it for internal efficiencies or consumption, or to commercialize a product out of it. And it was really fascinating then, because I was at the Collision conference last week here in Toronto, and it may as well have been the Gen AI conference. Dominated every stage, dominated the entire startup scene, all growth stage companies. But it was really great because it was helpful to see sort of the progress other people were making, some of the tech that has been already constructed and in the marketplace that leverage AI, and sort of what the wins are, what the successes are, and the things that aren't. But that being said, the conversations, my sales conversations, are usually centered on two different distinct channels within, I would say, the Gen AI space. Obviously, fanboy topics like that, Internet of Things, Gen AI, they're going to constantly be on top of mind. But I think what we're seeing is that there is pressure to come up with working prototypes and proofs of concept, and then over sort of solving the production problem. How do you actually make that useful beyond the POC stage? And so when we talk about sort of hiring conversations, people are looking for folks who have demonstrated examples in their career of developing sort of new and innovative products that have seen the light of day. And so I would say that, the demand is now a tightening of the belt on restrictions. We're not just looking for devs, and we're not just looking for people who've done neural networks. We want people who can get through sort of the GTM cycle of actually commercializing and bringing these products into the production sphere. And lots of interesting conversations there, but that's definitely been a hot buzz subject. And then, of course, it's what do we need as far as the infrastructure guys behind it to power it, and as far as the data guys to give ourselves, whether it's going to be an internal training set or developing those sort of RAG engines to help actually just sort of control what the outputs are. So yeah, everything really comes back to this conversation, I think, about Gen AI and all of the ancillary spheres of talent and of competencies that they are looking to either upskill internally or to acquire through hiring.
So anybody want to throw in on that? Or what? Sorry, go ahead, Rob. Go for it.
Yeah. So I didn't mention we use Zoho One as our technology stack in our business, and so about a year and a half ago, when I was customizing it, the cost of hiring Zoho developers to do that work was so high that I ultimately ended up registering another company that does Zoho development work, because Zoho comes from India, so I had the ability to employ people in India. And so I can speak somewhat about just what I've seen in terms of a growing demand for just technical solutions within the recruiting space. So more people right now than ever are curious about, hey, we're using this right now, and we're looking that maybe we would like to do this in the future. We can't really do it. We're thinking about changing our ATS. We're thinking about changing our CRM, or we're trying to automate this. Or we're trying to use ChatGPT here or there. So I am definitely seeing a really strong uptick in the interest that people have as far as streamlining and automating their recruiting companies right now.
Yeah, and majoritarily, Rob, you're dealing with recruiting companies and not tech companies. Go on, because of your offshoring
Correct.
business. And Shannon, just out of curiosity, just to contextualize a bit, because of the agility that you have, you I guess have had the freedom to sort of go where the hot topics are and go where the money is. Do you feel that in terms of sales and market in IT in general, is that just the only spot where the money is? If you're going to talk about fanboy topics like Gen AI and go around that, do you feel like it's been quiet elsewhere like it was before? Is it still doom and gloom, or are people spending and hiring and whatever? Are there still a lot of devs going out, or are they all on hold until they get replaced by AIs?
Well, I think there's definitely a demand for people who can be sort of AI fluent. So the polyglots who are able to incorporate AI into their business. I think what we're getting away from, and this is one of those subjects that can be very divisive about what our AI-enabled future is going to look like, and that whether or not we're going to create a further or exacerbate the further divide in income classes, creating a pseudo barrier into the knowledge worker economy, because now all those entry-level white-collar jobs, knowledge worker jobs, can be done by AI or can be replaced by AI or at risk. And so that's going to be one of those things. But one of the things I've noticed is that the discussion around AI is pretty ubiquitous across industries where I serve tech as the sort of horizontal, but also within the tech vertical itself. Some of the product companies I'm talking to, it's sort of like, okay, so we need to find a way to leverage AI within the product itself and bring that as a customer-facing enhancement solution assistant. What I find really interesting, and I would have thought when everybody was jumping on the AI bandwagon, was that the demand would be in developing your own neural networks internally. And I think what we're recognizing is it's similar to like sort of cloud offerings and things like that. It's like, don't bother trying to compete with the big guys. They're so well funded. Don't try and like reinvent the wheel unless you're going to do a microcosm type of very highly specialized, single purpose, trained on a very specific proprietary data set, sort of neural network or machine learning model. I think that the demand is sort of like, okay, what can we layer on top of the LLMs that are out there in existence? How fast can we get that to production? And then how do we actually just have some degree of sort of control of what those outputs are? And I'm sorry, I'm probably going to refer back to this just because it did dominate so many discussions. But again, at the Collision Conference,
that good old Collision Conference.
I know you're gonna get sick of me saying that. One of the things that was really brought up though is that we have to learn to think differently about this technology. The generative component of this technology means that you're not going to be able to use it to completely replace the areas where we already leverage technology with determined inputs and determined outputs. AI is non-deterministic, and so it opens the floor for opportunities to put us on a path to inform sort of new avenues in creative thinking. But you're going to be sorely disappointed if you're going to be having the expectation that it's going to replace or just enhance the way we currently consume tech, where there's like an application layer that does something to the information we put in and it spits out a desired result. That's not leveraging the generative component of generative AI. So yeah, I would say that the conversation is ubiquitous across all sectors, across all things. And to Rob's point, there seems to be a race to commercialize build a better mousetrap when it comes to specific, I think, recruitment process, HRIS systems, ATS systems, CRM systems. I want to get MJ's take on that working in a CRM spot right now. But the demand is sort of like, oh, we can do this better. And I think we'll get, Rick, you and I talked about this last week. We could go down this path a little bit about separating that which can be done by machines and that which needs to be done and preserved and conserved as the human component. And helping, the conversations I'm having is helping clients recognize those when they're coming up with these ideation and brainstorming sessions about the business they want to pursue.
Awesome. Good. Yes. So yeah, I mean that's a big part of the conversation we're seeing. MJ, Rick, you wanna hit on what you're seeing out there and what's hot, what's not, kind of in terms of market sales right now? Like, are people resistant? What are they looking?
Yeah, sure. I kind of see it on from a different lens, because I have customers who want to leverage Gen AI to improve their processes and do more with less, which has been a huge topic in the tech industry ever since we're bouncing back from COVID. So from my end, I'm seeing, when I'm talking to RevOps or sales or customer success, everyone wants to leverage Gen AI. And then it goes to IT, and there's a big issue around security, privacy. Does my data go? Is it available to be searched? Because you're sharing your company's data, right, with a large language model. So there's appetite to consume it, but there's also some restrictions that we have to go through to make sure that the product that we're delivering and the offering that is going to be implemented at the customer is actually kosher with all of the security and privacy laws that are in place. The other thing that I'm seeing as well is that in order to leverage all of the data that you have, a lot of the customers have their data in silos, and they really need to bring all of that data together in order to have something to pull from that makes sense. So it's making a lot of people realize that their data is not connected, that they have a lot of tech debt, and I feel like it's a domino that is going to make customers actually address their tech debt and address those issues so they can really leverage Gen AI to its best capability.
Interesting. Rick, how are you feeling about stuff out there?
All right, let me put this out there that as more of a people person than product person, I'm not as astute to the generative AI or predictive modeling that you guys are talking about, but I do know that one thing that we always see in the market is the talk of job replacement. Are the robots coming for our jobs more or less?
Exactly.
And the one thing I found in my career tenure throughout mostly technology is where I built my book of business and my basis is that the human element is what facilitates the robot itself, right? We need the person to operate the technology. We have these self-driving cars, but someone's going to build it, right? And so what I'm seeing, to pivot away from, the AI conversation into something that relates a little bit more to what it is that I'm estalled with, is the person element. We all know that talent itself is a cost function, and one thing that companies are looking at right now is the cost associated with this human element. And so what Rob is probably very affiliated with is the outsourced model. It's nothing new, but one thing I'm seeing now is that it's also nothing new, but it's a little bit more on the horizon, and something that's coming to light more is the idea of nearshoring talent, or what we refer to as South American talent. Why is that? Though it costs more money, companies are seeing that they like nearshore talent because there's this strong affiliation with people in South America and our USA based or our North American products, our language, our popular culture. So where I'm seeing this lessening in the gap, or this closing of the gap, instead of going the tech method, is utilizing resources outside of the country that aren't the traditional offshore in India, the Philippines, China, but just south of us on the border. And so, something I'll talk about is the future of sales, but as far as like a market temperature check, you can definitely see that there's a strong positive correlation between South American talent, their affiliation with the USA market, and where they're stepping in to fill the gap with some talent needs and sales needs.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. So yeah, I guess that for me, from an overview, from what all you guys brought to the table, is also what I'm seeing out there too, which is it's a complicated market. It's not A plus B equals C like it used to be, where you could just be like, okay, I've got my sales reps on my team. I'm going to tell them to call these hiring managers, if you're in recruitment, let's say, and pitch a candidate, and we're going to get it. Or I'm going to call these companies because they use my competitor's CRM and sell them. It's not quite so simple anymore. I feel like there's a lot of nuance. You need to know who to contact, why are you contacting them, how are you reaching out to them, and usually it's a multi-pronged approach just to get someone's attention, because I feel like all of these AI tools that exist to help recruiters, salespeople, and everything, it's just there's so much noise out there that we're all just bombarded with a million different kinds of messages, emails, LinkedIn, LinkedIn in-mails, voicemails, mostly overseas. I get voicemails, whatever, WhatsApp messages asking me all kinds of stuff. I have my work number, like my cell number, on my LinkedIn, which is probably crazy. But yeah, I get some very colorful messages from different people all over the world on WhatsApp because of that.
Speaking, to Cristiano's point about being a people person, and picking up on what you're saying right now, Rick, I've noticed a huge uptick in the spam that I get, and but not only the spam, but the copy of the spam specifically has changed. So in the old days, you'd get spammed. Okay, I've seen this message before. They just send you the same email multiple times. Now, the messages are probably assisted by AI and a human element, but they're progressively, depending on how many, if it's the third or fourth or fifth or sixth message, they're starting to get rude. Like I had somebody send me an automated message that say like, hey, I've seen you open my email, and either you're going to do something or like let me know. It was very direct and rude, and I was thinking like it's easy to do. Like a human would never do that, but as this has been trained by AI, and somebody looked at it and said, okay, well that makes sense. Like they still haven't contacted, but I will never be doing that. That's for sure. I'm wondering if anybody else has seen that, the change in tone specifically.
Well, you know what I think they're trying to prey on? I think they're trying to prey on our components of like almost like guilt and kindness and like politeness. It's polite to, it's rude to ignore someone, and we're starting to get like very aggressive sales tactics. So apparently, I'm just going to put this out there that a whole bunch of like the SEO and web design guys hate my website, because that seems to be what I attract most as a business owner. Is sort of like, you're not ranking on Google, and I'm like, you don't know how you sell staffing services because Google ranking scores, nobody's out there saying like, who are the staffing companies I need to. You're definitely not going to do that through sort of marketing and SEO. I'm sure some of the big guys do, but I'm not going to be able to compete with the budget of a Manpower or Randstad. When it comes to trying to do the sort of online marketing and things like that. And instead, taking a different tact in the sales, how do you differentiate yourself in this climate with these, I don't want to be the one who sends what might as well be a template, because if you're using very basic prompts with any of the AI tools to generate content, it all ends up sounding the same. It's the reason why I'm pretty sure anybody on this call could identify a ChatGPT written resume from about a mile away. And so that's where it's sort of like you have to start thinking about the whole business differently, recognizing that hiring managers don't want to be talking about jobs. Passive candidates don't want to be talking about jobs. Talent acquisition people are so sick of talking about jobs. So, this is where the content needs to, I think, diverge from the traditional sort of subject matter. We need to find new ways in, which is interesting that we opened this chat about, hey, what's important to our clients and where are those opportunities coming from? And that's where the subject matter tends to fall into the Gen AI space, because it is such a fanboy topic.
Yeah. You guys seeing these same things, these sequenced emails that get increasingly like it's a threat or a dare, like get back to me or else?
I think it's jolting and it's evoking of our emotions, and that's why we see them. It's a lot easier to send a message like that, even if you have the human element behind it, generating these messages, to hide behind your computer. We call it the keyboard warriors, so to speak. Not necessarily that we're that they, I should say, are trying to offend us, but the jolt itself could merit a response. Once they merit a response, they know that the email was valid. There's a person on the other line, and so that they can overcome some sort of objection, even when the word is simply no or no thank you or please unsubscribe me. They know that that's one way to get in, even though it doesn't sound like it's a way to get in when somebody tells you no. We're taught at high level sales conferences, how to overcome objections, and the word no is just one of many that are taught on how do you overcome the word no or no thank you or please unsubscribe. So as long as they can jolt us into a response, I think that's the ultimate end. I won't say it's the ultimate end goal, but it's definitely a path of introduction, I should say. And so, yes, they come out. I think it has a lot to do with a lot of the saturation of markets, right? How do you stand out? What can you do to get yourself in there? We see social media posts now. There's a lot of sales influencers there on TikTok, or their TikTok accounts go on LinkedIn now, and they're messaging. We see this guy. I'm fairly sure we've all seen this guy, Jeremy Minor, out there. Where do we go from here? Haven't heard from you. What's next? So because there's so much sales information out there, because there's so much lingo that goes along with it, what do we do to merit a response? And I gotta admit, I don't hate them on the other side of the line for sending me these kind of emails, because it's different than the same old spam that we see coming in day out. And I teach my people to come in with a purpose now. If you do what you got to do to merit a response. Hopefully it's, a thumbs up and a yes than a no, but a response is better than no response at all. So that's my take on it.
I think it's such a cool take that you have, that you just said something that I think, I've identified in recent years, and that is that the appetite for the hustle on the receiving end is so much different in the States. And you said you were based in Pennsylvania. So I find that when I'm calling into like American companies, the fact that I can string a sentence together and maybe say something hopefully thought-provoking, and then I get a much warmer response and a greater appetite. I think the still very like sort of European influence of bothering people that we have as a general reception in Canada. So people are so anti, like they just don't answer their calls anymore. And I speak with prospects that I'm referred into, that I've literally done the hardcore like networking in the background to get in front of somebody I want to talk to. And I get in front of them and they're like, oh, it's a good thing so-and-so recommended you, because there's no way that you would otherwise get through. I don't even answer my phone anymore. So yeah, in the States though, when you get people live on the phone, I find that there's maybe it's just on a population base and a probabilistic result, but the appetite to talk to me is far greater. Like, all right, yeah, I like the cut of your jib. We'll have a chat.
Yeah, and if you're good at being salesy in the U.S., I feel like people, by and large, better chance that people are just kind of like, I like that pitch. That was good. Okay, let's work together.
Yeah, for sure.
Canada is kind of like, oh God, a sales call. That just ruined my day a little bit. Sadly. An allergic reaction to it a bit.
Yeah.
I think myself, I've been trying to attend more events for precisely that reason. When I go to an industry event and I speak with people, it's never a problem. As soon as we strike up a conversation, we can find some common ground. And, sometimes there's a fit, sometimes there isn't, but it's easy to just bounce around like a pinball and, move on to the next person. Where if you're trying to be found in the digital realm of things, there is just a ton of traffic there. And whether it's creating AI generated content to increase your followers, like all of these things are just generating noise. And even if you have good content and original ideas and you're not using AI, there's still so many other people that are doing the same on the platform. I think we will see, a bit of a migration into face-to-face events and more where people just want to connect and tell me what it is and hear what the real story is, and tune down some of that noise that's going on in the background.
I think already Rob, we're seeing that with just video, like the difference between I like to write because it's a creative exercise and endeavor for me. People don't like to read, so it's not very effective. I think I'm getting far less traction than I'm noticing a lot of like my competitors, other salespeople out there doing video, whether that's generated video or just themselves. You know, Rick, you're using this platform, you're 20 episodes into this, you know, and just saying, how do we establish credibility and authority with our audience by being in the know on the subject matter that's going to be important to them. And if you know, people are more likely and more apt to watch. And so this is where we start talking about differentiating yourself across different channels. The messaging itself isn't going to win. It's just like we talk about the idea that passive candidates are, like, they know where jobs are. They know that if they want to go, especially in tech, if they want to go get a new job, they go onto LinkedIn. Most of them don't hang out there most of the time anyway, but hey, that's where all the recruiters are. So that's where you go. And so this idea that you're going to win a passive candidate over by flipping them a job description, even if it's the perfect, most ideal job ever for them, like, you haven't establish that credibility, that trust, that authority to be able to start making those suggestions. You're trying to propose things that are solutions to problems you don't even know exist. So we're talking about how to knock on the door, how to open the initial door. You're right, Rob, once you're face to face with somebody, once you can hold their attention for more than 10 seconds, you know, the messaging is great. You can develop that rapport and connection and do wonderful things, but it is the getting them to open the door that this market and this climate has really changed.
Yeah, I feel like the doors are have to be pretty securely shut, right? Because there's just too much out there. You'd go nuts actually listening to everything that's out there. So it's like, in order to actually decide you want to listen to what somebody has to say, it's going to take a lot nowadays. So as a salesperson, I think that we can't just go in being like, oh, but I have a great job for this person if you're a recruiter, or oh, they need this product because of XYZ. We're not there yet. They haven't decided that they want to listen to anything you're saying yet. And I feel like that is the challenge. But do you guys feel that there's also sort of like a lot more put on the plates of salespeople nowadays in terms of metrics and coaching and whatever are around so many different types of statistical quantitative data? You know, it's like, build a sequence. You have to have this many people and this many steps, and it's got to be this. And then now what you're going to have to do is you're doing a calling campaign here. So you're going to have to enrich the stats that are blah, 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 and get to find this one, and then use this tool for this, use that tool for that. And then so then we're going to look at an overview, a macro view of this quarterly, but we're going to look at these ones weekly. And you're going to look at, like, it just feels like there's a lot out there, which is aimed at getting specific results. But my impression from speaking to people who are in sales, like, I get to talk about and decide these things with my company. So I'm lucky that way. We discuss it together and we try different things. But I'm getting from a lot of people that it's disjointed. They don't even really kind of know what their metrics are supposed to be. And they don't totally fully understand when they're doing well. They're hitting certain assignments, but are they making money? Are they profitable? Then they just go, I guess the market's no good, because I'm busy doing all these different things and hitting all these little micro metrics and using all these different tools. I'm not making a lot of money, but do you feel this out there, that sometimes the complex tech stack is actually just a distraction from the actual work itself?
I think it varies from organization to organization, and that might be general lingo I'm throwing out there. But, you know, I've been at organizations where they're very heavy KPI indicator related. You know, these are your metrics. You have to hit these at the bottom to reach the top. You got to fill the funnel at the top to get to the bottom deal. And then I've been at other organizations where they've said, you know, we don't really have KPIs. You know, we're really end result focused. And so, you know, that also sometimes kind of can be obtuse, if you know what I mean by that. I do prefer sort of the latter, because in coaching my sales reps underneath me, I usually found that KPIs tend to put some sort of unrealistic expectation or some unrealistic pressure on themselves, which they really don't want. And I feel that people operate at their best when they're at their most eased. And so I usually say that, you know, we'll develop the KPIs together based on things that you want to achieve. And so, you know, we take it, hey, you know, here's your salary. What do you want to earn to come the end of the year? And they say, you know, I want to make X amount of money come the end of the year. I say, all right, do you know your averages in this, or this category? And, you know, if they give me an average, we'll work backwards from there. And so, okay, in order to achieve your end goal, which is this X amount of income, based on your laws of averages, these are the metrics that you're going to have to hit either on a daily, weekly, monthly, or quarterly basis. Do you feel you can achieve these based on your own personal preferences, experience? And, most of the time they say yes because they say yes. But, I definitely found that there is this gap between the metrics of what's quality versus what is quantity, right?
Yep.
And so I think everybody wants to say that, we're quality focused. But
everybody, who's going to say they're not quality
who's going to say that, we're not quality focused? And so with that said, how do we really break it down? It really comes down to each individual. Some people perform, others don't. We set out metrics out there as KPIs. We like to see numbers as salespeople, right? We like to see that you're reaching out to people, especially if you're newer in the organization and building that pipeline. If you're more experienced, right? What book of business do you bring with you? How do you operate? Are you sending out massive amounts of email campaigns? Do you have a Rolodex of people that you work with that give you referrals, right? So, it's long-winded, and I think any of us can go on for days and days about KPIs, numbers, and metrics and how they get convoluted in the day-to-day sales reps' actions. But we all throw it out there, that word balance, right? You just got to find that balance. And once you find that balance, so it works for each individual, hopefully you can come up with or construct some sort of program that you can, I don't want to say automate across a number of other people, but it's definitely helpful whenever you can write out some sort of training manual that you can give to somebody, and they can either use technology to automate it or they manually do it themselves. But that's kind of my perspective on KPIs, numbers, metrics.
Yep.
I love that. Sorry, Trini, you go.
I was going to say, I think that we've all noticed that it's much easier to apply for a job these days. So, when candidates look at a job, send my resume, click, click, click. So that act in itself has, in many ways, nullified the advantages, the tech advantages that we have now of being able to screen candidates faster. Or, for instance, when I was a recruiter, one of the things that seemed to take a long time for me, I'd find the candidate, confirm the candidate, and then I'd spend all day procrastinating writing the profile to submit to the client. So just because I hated doing the writing and just that whole piece of it. So when I realized how easily I could put that together, check it, verify, does that sound like me? Does it include everything? It literally turns that job into, 1/10 of what it used to be for myself. So my brain immediately goes to, if I was a recruiter nowadays, I'd be able to submit 10 candidates a day, no problem with those type of technology. But the reality is we need to filter through 580 applicants for the job now and find out who really is a candidate and figure out how do we get down to whether this person is local or, like so many other factors. So I think there are, things that are making the job easier and faster, but the sheer volume as a result of the ease of being able to apply with a click just sort of nullifies it. So we're back to square one.
I think, I'm going to go back to Cristiano's point here about creating sort of metrics that tell a story. And I love you hit on something that is so key, and that is, do you know your averages? I remember working in a shop where we started paying attention to metrics, and I had never really been given any direction. I grew up in an environment where it was, we'll call it loose, as far as being told, like, how many dials am I supposed to be making a day in sales? And I just didn't have that. And because I was new, it's something I had to figure out on my own. But it was interesting. Then we went to a shop where we were evaluating this, and we recognized that my style and my counterpart's style were totally different. And I used to say, like, I don't do dialing for dollars. Like, that is not. Whereas this person was really comfortable. They had a script that worked, and I don't know as far as the quantity of deals that were any different between my performance and this person's performance. But because I was trying to be a little more cerebral about my approach, I was having subject matter conversations, really kind of going beyond the superficial, hi, we have jobs. And, I'm going to, sorry. We do recruitment. I'm getting some feedback here. So, but we do recruitment and that better?
I
Okay.
don't know who's feeding back, but if we can try and mute ourselves, maybe when we're not the one speaking, something's up with the audio, please. Thank you.
Awesome. But that difference, and so to Christiana's point, is that my metrics will look very different. And so my sort of setting goals for myself, than my counterpart, it would be ridiculous to put us on the same benchmark as far as that. That being said, I do feel that post-pandemic, the talent constraint and this shift to like a talent abundant market has completely shifted the entire industry average baseline when it comes to generating new sales and new clients. And I would make that statement mostly on the basis that, again, we're talking about the noise, but also on the impression that a lot of organizations have is that in a talent-rich climate, I don't need to be paying agencies to just send me more of the same. If they're sending me the same retread candidates that this tech can, or that my internal team can drum up just through job postings, why am I paying, perm fees for search services? And so I think there's more of a resistance that way. And unless you can really find sorry to get graphic, but find the bullet wound and stick your finger in it and then really uncover what that pain is in the hiring process. Because let's be real, a talent abundant market is not any better for hiring managers who are now frustrated, they're fatigued, the orders are stagnating. Candidates are starting to think that jobs are fake because they're posted and reposted and reposted, because they're not drumming up the quality that they're looking for in those high traffic public markets. So I would say that even just to like the number of dials required to get a pickup and have a conversation, to get a meeting, to get a client sign, to get a job order, has probably expanded. If the industry average was like 13 to 1 before, it's probably closer to 20 to 1 now. And so if you are going to be someone who's looking at your own metrics and your own averages and saying, how do I adapt and adjust? You have to factor in this sort of time and attention and focus required to conduct those activities, those good, wholesome activities to fill the top of the funnel. So saying, 20 dials a day isn't going to do it anymore. Now I need to do 40 dials a day to generate those, whatever your numbers are. But again, it goes back to your specific numbers. And this is also why I think the multi-channel approach is very important, so that you are percolating your name within your target audience, associating yourself with some credibility and authority instead of just trying to game the numbers themselves. But that's my very sort of quality approach, as opposed to the dialing for dollars approach, which you still can't argue with. There is still definitely a correlation and relationship of psychodialing your prospect until they pick up and then converting a certain percentage of them. So
that's the balance thing, right? Of the quantity and quality. You can't only be quality with no quantity, for sure. But I fully hear what you're saying, Shannon, that I feel like a lot of times people have a short-term thinking approach where it's like, just hit these numbers and you'll make money. That's done, I think. I think there's too much out there right now. It has to be more nuanced than that. It has to be more, if you're going to snowball and actually build a book of business, it has to be more thoughtful, multi-channel, grow a book, grow a network, whatever it is. MJ, you've worked at startups doing cutting edge things since I've known you over the past almost 10 years now. 10 years.
10 years.
And you've also worked at very big, much bigger organizations, doing sales and different kinds of things. What's your perspective, not from a staffing, more tech perspective, of the outreach, the metrics, the sales kind of side of it? What have you seen up and down over the past, changes in the past while?
Yeah, for sure. Obviously it's very different in a startup world where you're wearing many hats. So your sales rep, your customer success, your tech support, your everything. And there's a lot less structure in terms of metrics. It's like, oh, you're bringing us customers. Great. We need more. there's no targets. There's no, so it's a lot less sophisticated. Right. And it's good. On the total opposite end of the spectrum. I now work for a company that has an incredible number of metrics to hit. And I think, to Chris's point, it's a balancing act, right? Trying to hit your numbers while, figuring out what works for you. We definitely have some sales reps that are all about, they're on the phone all day long, dialing for dollars, and it works. I think it also depends on the market that you're in. If you're in SMB and you have a book of business and new logos to reach out to, that's 800 to 1,000 customers, you have to be on the phone all day and dial for dollars. When you're in mid-market enterprise or even, emerging enterprise, it's all about the reach out has to be personal. You have to know the industry. You have to know what the pain is, because otherwise, why would people be taking your call, right? So I think it just goes back to, what Shannon was saying, figuring out what works for you and how you're going to get there, and focusing on what's going to bring you results versus, just putting that check mark in the box sometimes. And with smaller companies, you don't necessarily need to have those checkbox exercises, but with larger companies, you kind of have to balance where, well, the company is asking for this, you need to do X, figure out where in the middle you're going to be able to do both and focus on the quality when it calls for it.
Yeah, absolutely. We're at 1:45, which is great. I love how juicy this is. If any of you guys need to pop off at 1, that's fine. We can go longer if we want to. I know some people need to have a hard stop at 1, but I wanted to just throw it out there to anybody who's listening. We cannot see if you're on there right now, but please throw up comments. How do you guys feel about it? I know we've invited a lot of salespeople who are supposed to be attending. So, are we all nuts? Do you guys see anything out there that we haven't covered that you're interested in? Any metrics that make no sense? This is a good spot, I think, to think through some things that have changed, and pop them in there. We'll definitely address them. For me personally, I'd like to shift over to ties into a couple things, I think, but changes in the way that companies run and how that affects sales. So meaning to go with everything we're saying right now, and continue it down into the sort of quote unquote future of sales, right? As a sales rep of any type, there's a lot of changes in the market. Enterprise companies don't operate the same way they did before COVID in general, and they have a different vendor process, and they have different expectations, and they're changing technology. SMB companies don't operate the same way. Some of them went fully remote for a little while, and whatever. Some of them are very siloed, or they have an offshore division now. Again, as several of you people are involved in looking at this as well. So then it's like the people who run the offshore division. So you've got your VP or head of the offshore. You have the onshore people, then you have someone who's managing remote individuals. There's not that much communication. They have a brief that's sent to someone else who creates a brief for that, which is a game of broken telephone. So when you come in, you want to be a subject matter expert. You want to be a partner with them. But it's hard, even if they say, yeah, we really want to partner with somebody. How are you supposed to be anything other than a vendor if they're giving you a two-dimensional, broken sense of what it is? You try to deliver something that makes sense. You don't actually know. The problem is 3 steps away from the person you're speaking to. You can't actually diagnose the problem. There's a lot more of that. The game of broken telephone that I've seen and other people I speak to makes it tough to qualify a job order that you've taken in of any type, and it makes it harder to deliver a solution. So like communication breakdown within an organization trickles down to us, the salesperson. So when you pick it up, then that's another challenge, which again, it means different things. If you're just dialing out and you're a vendor, good luck with some of these. They have no clue what their problem is anymore. It becomes something altogether different by the end of the broken telephone. I feel personally, and I'm throwing this out there as a topic for general discussion though in the future, I feel personally that the personal branding option and branding yourself, truly actually immersing yourself in being a bit of an SMB, means being able to diagnose sometimes. Having people come to you is fine, but going to them and saying, hey, either way, like asking hard questions and not just being like, yay, I got business, let's go do it, has never been more important, because you could just go down a rabbit hole forever and neither party will get anything out of it. You know what I mean? Because of all these changes. How are you feeling about that? How has it changed? What's the vibe like with you guys and your clients? Is this a big problem?
Well,
absolutely. We're so commoditized. I was going to say, like, MJ, like, tell me about product-led, sort of hooks, because it's wonderful to me to have the idea that's like, well, there's this kind of like, there's this one feature that solves this particular problem, and it feels like there's like a universality to it on the product side. Whereas in recruitment, we can all assert that I'm better than the next guy at, what's required to actually coerce a human being to make a decision, to put on their candidate hat and subject themselves to the virtual proctology exam that an evaluation process is, in order to make a move. I can say, oh, I'm really good at it. I'm so good. Like that is fine. But at the end of the day, even terrible recruiters can still produce what look like viable resumes because they're keyword optimized. It's like, yeah, okay, this guy's worth a sniff test, even if like the candidate's not engaged or doesn't know that they've been submitted to the client. So those differentiators and saying like, no, but I mean it when I say it, like I really am good. There is nothing there, and the proof is in the pudding. And this is why we have to get in recruitment specifically, why the noise and overcoming that and becoming subject matter experts is a good, and doing the hard work of networking is a good way to get in front of prospects. Talk to me about, MJ, this is entirely for you, and that is, how much of a lead-in do you get, or do you feel like you get extra runway because you're talking about a product and not a service?
Funny enough, we never talk about product or service.
Oh, really? Okay. This is good. This is good. I take notes.
It's never about product with us. And, whether it's my current company or any other company, you got to talk about the business processes that you're going to try to solve and the issues that they're having, right? And the biggest roadblock that I get, and potentially it's because there are so many vendors reaching out for the same product or service, is getting in front of the right people, but getting their time as well. Because, the solution that my company sells right now is it's multifaceted. It's not just a one and done. And so it touches many areas of the business, and you want to try to do discovery as much as possible with as many departments as possible. And it's really tough to get people's time. People are overworked right now. It's going back to this doing more with less. So they're pulling every direction. And so there has to be a compelling offering that you present to them for them to actually give you your time, for them to give their time to you. Sorry. So yeah, I think that's the discovery part is so key. And really showing up as a partner and not just a vendor that, hey, I have this product, this service that's going to cost this much per month, and it's going to solve this, this, and this. That might not resonate with you don't even know what you're trying to solve unless they actually talk to you. And this is where everybody's been talking about doing long-term and just, really massaging these relationships and showing up at events and doing in-person conferences and stuff like that. This is really where you can build that trust with the customer, so that when you are calling them and you are telling them like, hey, we have this new offering, we have this new use case that I just heard about with another customer, they're actually going to take your call and willing to talk to you and see you as a trusted advisor. I think that's really key on the product side for sure. And then also talk about the value it's going to bring, right? It doesn't matter if you're selling CRM or if you're selling a service solution or if you're selling anything else. It could be Zendesk, it could be Zoho, it could be Salesforce, it could be whatever else. That at the end of the day, that doesn't matter. How is it going to impact my work on a day-to-day basis? How is it going to impact the company? What's the ROI I can expect? And I think you have to lead with that rather than leading with the services and products that your company is offering. Does that answer your question?
MJ, I think you made great points there. And actually in your past talks that you were talking about before, you mentioned some things like, the discovery, right? What works for you, and then building trust. And, Rick, you mentioned earlier about being a subject matter expert. And for me, those things all come together whenever I use the word engagement. Now, in sales, that word engagement can mean different things, but, are you engaged is one thing, and are you interested is another. And I think that those two together help us really with that discovery, how to build trust, being a subject matter expert. So to give an example of this, to use my own personal professional experience, I'm a first generation Italian guy. So a lot of my clients now are Italian companies with the USA footprint or European companies with the USA footprint. So I position myself as this guy, this recruiter, this talent acquisition expert who used to live in Italy, who speaks a little bit of Italian. And not only do I know their product, but also know the culture of what it takes to run behind an Italian run and led company, because it's different than the, I guess you could say, the heterogeneous society that we face now in America, right? It's a lot more homogeneous over there in Europe. And so the fact that I'm interested in it, it helps with my engagement. That's how I stay engaged. That's how I become a subject matter expert. Not that I know everything about Italian manufacturing or Italian luxury products, but position myself in a way where I add value to these companies that, hey, Rick C, as in Rick Cristiano, not Rick Colucci.
Not Rick C, although
you are Rick C. He knows what it takes to do recruiting because he's in the recruiting industry, but he also has that little niche that he knows about European lifestyle brands. He knows about Italian manufacturing, how Italian companies run. It's very patriarchal. It's not as much performance. It's performance, but you don't get promoted as much for performance as much as you might get promoted for being another Italian. So, for example, you could be a great sales guy here in the United States selling an Italian product, but they might send over another Italian guy from Italy to be their VP of sales simply because he's Italian. And as long as you know that and you can relay that you know that, whether that's a positive or negative, that's how you get their attention, how you get that discovery, their trust in you, so that not only are you engaging with them, but you're also engaged from an interest perspective. And, these things all kind of come together whenever you're really becoming the subject matter expert. You're getting their time, so to speak, in a time where we know that time is limited and people don't want to give it to you. Mm-hmm. So that's probably my final 2 cents here, just because I do have a hard stop in about 3 minutes. So unless you guys have specific questions for me or want any talking points from me, I hope that my input added a little value to this call.
It absolutely did, Rick. And you know what? Actually, before you do jump off, and I know maybe some of us all have to, but that's the thing, is personal branding. I think that having a personal brand and not being afraid of being who you are, instead doubling down in it and saying like, oh, I wonder if some clients won't want someone who's so proudly Italian American, Italian Canadian, or wherever else. You have to sort of throw that out the window and be like, no, I'm going to attract people based on my personal brand and that is going to repel some people, but I will then find better, more loyal relationships than I would trying to please everybody with my brand. And then I become commoditized. I become commoditized if I'm focused on, I have the best candidates for you. Or to a candidate, I have the best jobs for you. If you take yourself out of the equation, now there's never been a better time to do the opposite. To put yourself really into the equation so you can actually get loyalty quicker, build relationships quicker, fewer of them, but more loyal relationships. I think that's personally, I feel like that's where this is all going.
I've noticed a big shift towards self-management, actually. Yeah. I know I came from that background previously, so I do have a lot of experience, so maybe my antenna's up a little bit more than the average person, but I've noticed more folks online, on LinkedIn in particular, talking about just the efficiencies they've found by not having to employ layers and layers of leadership and management. And I can definitely concur that since we adopted a work from home model, it was logical that we wouldn't have managers and leaders doing those traditional roles. So what that did was it effectively changed the way we hire people. So we don't just hire the same profile that we would have before. Yep. We ask completely different questions. We want to determine whether this individual has the ability to motivate themselves. And so I think we're going to see more and more emphasis on hiring people that have that ability. And to your point about having your own brand, it should be part of your own brand, reflecting that you come as a self-contained package. And that represents value to anyone who is hiring you, because it means that it's a possibility that they might not have to spend $100K a year on somebody to babysit a team of people.
To babysit, I love it. Well, okay, I'm going to take a moment here. If anybody needs to jump off, by all means, Rick, thank you very much for joining. Anybody else got to jump off at a hard stop at 1? Don't be shy.
Thanks so much for having me, everybody. It was great hearing from all of you. Nice meeting you all. Hope you all have a great rest of your day.
Appreciate it. Have a good one.
Nice meeting you too.
I wanted to take a moment to acknowledge this comment that came in too, which I think is very relevant to what we're saying. So in recruitment, quality is crucial. Delivering with quality is what truly makes a difference. High number of applicants can provide options, but identifying and selecting top talent ensures exceptional results. Balancing both quality and quantity leads to successful. I'm imagining this was going to say outcomes. I apologize to who you know who you are, who put that comment, but unfortunately it cuts off after a certain word count in the app that we're using. If you wanted to add to that, please do put it in a separate comment. But this in recruitment anyway, and I think everywhere, is delivering on what you promise. You can't just get people's attention promising the world and then turn around and deliver exactly the normal result. You have to deliver what you promise. So it's knowing, I think, through and through, what do we do that's different and interesting and cool that we can realistically do? And then articulating that and then putting it through your personal brand. So it's just kind of like, hey, let me be creative about getting your impression. This is who I am. I'm not this. I'm not going to try and be, everything to everyone, but I am this. And this is what I think as a subject matter expert will help your problem now that we've spoken, and then doing exactly that. It sounds simple, and yet feels so rare in any facet of life right now. It feels like every time that the preview for a game on your cell phone has all these characters running around talking to each other, you get it, and it looks like Pac-Man. Nobody's talking. They're all just 2D little guys going around like everything down to like ads for games on people's phones. The preview is far better than the movie, so to speak, and that just can't continue to be the case. I feel like it's everywhere in society, and it is frustrating. I gotta say personally.
Well, do you think that that's a product of like I think marketing in sales are like kind of due for a reckoning, and everybody like in this effort at automation, at trying to find ways to automate and all that. And the noise is overwhelming. And there's increasingly like studies that's talking about the different channels that are just becoming so saturated and just so frustrating for people that it's having negative impact on mental health. And so people are like disconnecting after work even more so than they did previously because they're just constantly bombarded. And I think, increasingly, I almost feel like sales became kind of like a dirty word. For a while, we all had this like conjured image of like the used car salesman or the guy who's trying to like hawk stolen watches out of his jacket, and then it was like, oh, but marketing is king. And because there was metrics around it and there did feel like there was a certain degree of certainty, but similar to what we just talked about in our sales funnel, those marketing metrics are being extended. And now you're getting what used to be kind of like passive resistance. Now you're getting active resistance to being bombarded, people removing profiles from LinkedIn, like removing themselves as the product on a lot of these channels. And I think what we're seeing is that this automate everything in the name of AI and efficiency and expanding your reach and exponential growth. I think that the ones who are doing a much better job at rising above the noise isn't the screaming, bombarding, loud, flashy graphics and all that. It's the people who are presenting a brand in a very succinct, directed, concerted way that's not clearly a form template that drops in your company name and your name and all that stuff, but who's going to actually make you pause and ask questions and recognizing that, it still takes more touch points to pass that threshold, but at least you're actually going to gain more traction that way because there is something unique. And if the uniqueness is nothing beyond I'm not blasting you with form emails and this isn't a mass blast, I think that's where a lot of my conversations are coming from. So it's like slowing down to go fast, being intentional, being well researched, maybe inferring or being able to like come up with your ICP and then inferring what their problems might be and then saying like, hey, I worked with X company suffering the same challenge. You guys are in the same space clearly, and I see that you're hiring for X positions. Is this something you're also suffering from? And do you think that it's worthwhile to kick some tires and see where it takes us? I think that kind of no pressure approach. So where AI wants to go double down on the aggressive, like salesman that everybody hates, sales resistance to me in my world has been really decreased when you take this like, hey, I'm just trying to get on your radar. I don't want to be that guy. And, I think that is almost more welcome as far as like ways to rise above the noise. But I do feel that we're already seeing all the major email providers changing their spam rules almost monthly now on what's going to get flagged as spam. Even newsletters that I subscribe to are ending up in my recycling box if I haven't interacted with them after 2 or 3 cycles. So the definitions of spam are different, and I think marketing is really due for that. And of course, the Web3 and the removal of cookies, that's going to be another.
It's going to be a whole thing, and I can't wait for that to be our reality. But sadly, right now, and I'm curious as we'll probably close this off shortly here. I would imagine, although Lord knows I could stay doing this all day, but I know we have to work too. So sorry for suggesting it. But Rob and Marie-Josée also, like, do you guys feel this same thing that the metrics, like for marketing metrics, it's like you go to a marketing company to get your outreach, and they're like, what do you need from your outreach? Do you need engagement? Do you need clicks? Do you need someone to respond? You do? Okay, here's how you get people to respond. And then they give you the most absurd short-term thinking things. Like they're playing on fear, on guilt, on whatever else, just the most base emotions. But that is the marketing world we live in. Even if you want to get engagement on a post, you have to every single, I know we've done a lot of them personally, and I have friends who do this for a living. Every single post that performs well on every single piece of social media is going to be short, written by like an 8-year-old sounding, very heavy on an emotion, very extreme language. Those are the ones that perform the best because the algorithm pushes it out to your network the best, which is frustrating, trying to push stuff. So the whole reckoning of marketing, like you said, do you guys feel the same way, that this is sort of like we're a bit trapped by this marketing-driven world online for sales? And I'm bringing up a huge topic of conversation after we're supposed to be done.
I feel like you just did another panel here. Like
part 2.2 later. Oh, Rob, we don't have your audio anymore for some reason.
Oh, it's a deep well.
Yeah, it's a deep well. We're trapped in purgatory, in Dante's purgatory of marketing. So that's the big end. For anyone who's still on, they're just gonna be like, what the hell is Rick talking about? Anything else you guys would like to bring up on this topic of sales, outreach, tools, what's changed, whatever, before we call it a day and get back to our real jobs?
Be real. The more people that do that, it's like if you're in an economy that's filled with counterfeit, the only thing you really can do is just try to make your currency respected and valued and recognized and stand out. So if more people do that and lean into that, then I think what happens is if the marketing is effective because of AI automation, then it will continue. But if the consumer becomes more discriminating about what they like to consume and what they will respond to, then we'll see a change. And I think the only way that happens is by people understanding that and being true to it and trying to stick to to that maxim of being true and creating your own content and value proposition for people to see.
Fully agreed. I mean, I'm here, aren't I? So I agree. This is this whole event, everything that he was clearly. I loved what you said about in a world of counterfeit, you have to make your currency be more genuine. I love that. I'm going to quote that, and I'll give you credit for it on this.
Oh, nice.
I love that as a big way for salespeople in a world full of counterfeit. That's beautiful and poetic. MJ,
and I think what I would leave with is just be the person that cares.
Yeah.
It goes back to what you're saying about being inundated with requests, resumes, in your case, emails and outreach. Just be that person who is genuine, who actually cares about the customer. Realize that a project they might take on with you might impact their job, right?
Just because the Google algorithm recognizes you as the subject matter expert because you're creating reams of content doesn't mean that your customers will recognize you as a subject matter expert. They might look at you as a subject matter fool that uses AI to generate garbage in their inbox.
Yeah, you actually have to bring that value for sure.
and know when you are not necessarily the subject matter expert, and go get these experts and bring them in, because that's what makes you a trusted partner, right? It's like, hey, I know just enough to be dangerous about Gen AI, but guess what? I have 3 experts that would love to have a panel and have a discovery and talk about what you care about and what you're worried about in terms of Gen AI, and let's bring the right people in the room, and not necessarily, well, I think it just goes back to being genuine, knowing what your strengths are, and just making sure that you're not a counterfeit.
Yeah,
I like that too, actually.
I like it too, and I think that's a good takeaway, because again, being yourself is something that we were always sort of discouraged from doing. Certainly in my lifetime, it was always to just stick to the pitch, or pitch the company's brand, the product value, take yourself out of the equation. And funnily enough, the one job that I had, which was for a VAR, so a value-added reseller of technology, it's stuff that could get from anywhere. So that you had to put yourself in the equation. You had to be the value, as someone to tell them, hey, by the way, I just talked to a guy from HP. This is what's happening there. So maybe you don't want to go with them. You want to go with whoever, Lenovo for this in your company or whatever. So that kind of perspective, and having somebody to go through it with and to try to help you get deals and stuff, putting yourself in the equation was the only value they had. That was the value add, was you. And I feel like in a lot of companies, product-based companies, recruitment companies, those services especially, it's no, just stick to what the value, speeds and feeds. What are the features and benefits? So it's like, you're talking to a candidate, I have the best jobs. You're talking to a client, I have the best candidates. Ignore me completely. I think that day is a bit done of being able to do that. I think that you'll get replaced by an AI who could do it better, no?
People buy from people.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
There's a human component to all of this, and it has to be, like, again, compartmentalizing what is process oriented that can be done by machines, and then what is the human component that is going to be that connection point. And I think we're becoming wise. We all get excited about emerging technologies and the speed with which we can do it, that especially coming out of the pandemic, where we see the effects of isolation on mental health, we see the effects of asynchronous communication on mental health, and the people who are happiest in their jobs actually do have some sort of face-to-face component. And even though there's like vehement defenders of their right to disconnect and work from wherever and have that, if you look at overall job satisfaction numbers, generally speaking, if there's an in-person component, maybe not all 5 days a week in the office, but if there's an in-person component, the average job satisfaction from just being able to interact, and I'm just going to kind of finish on that same thought about the human stuff that needs to stay human, and this concept of mental health, and that is like, one of the latest studies that caused a buzz in the last few years was the predictor of early death as you age. And it's like having a network or a community or feeling like interpersonal connections is actually a greater predictor than family history of cancer, smoking, mental health, all of those things is a greater predictor. If you've got meaningful connections in your life, you will live longer and generally be happier. But if you don't, all of those things, it usurps economic classes, on all these other health predictors. And that is wild to me.
Yep.
That as much as we want to automate, we need to stop and say, should we? Because we should be aiming for as much sort of interpersonal connection. And I know I'm going to have a revolt of introverts right now being like, you can't force it down my throat. Of course I think that way, you're in sales. But, to be fair, I think that these are also skills. Like, there's a lot of people who are self-identified introverts who put themselves in that box, and it's because we don't really do a good job of selling or of teaching some of those interpersonal skills. And I know it's exhausting sometimes to do small talk, and people are like, I don't have appetite for that. That's okay.
Yeah, but there is your point though, Shannon. I think that the thing is, there is an inborn reward system for having a network and having close relationships, and introverted people still require some close relationships in order to just feel like a person and not devolve into mental health. I actually am going to take this opportunity to shamelessly promote one of my other posts that I had a while ago, which was on the things that AI cannot do and potentially will not ever be able to do. And I think that list of things are things that we should all focus on and push into, like lean into in our jobs, in our roles, in our environments at work, and suggest these things, because I feel like that's where it will go. And it's all around imagination, like creativity and imagination, empathy, AI is not going to empathize with anyone. Empathy is huge. Sympathy, empathy in sales, particularly, being able to form a relationship quickly. Improvisation is another one, right? So improvising a solution to a problem that was unforeseen, right? Quickly. So problem solving in general in that way, like not foreseeable problem solving in a chess kind of way. That obviously AI will do better than us quicker. But and the last one was, what was the other one? Negotiation, because it's a mix of creativity, improvisation, empathy, sympathy. Like there's a lot there. So all of those kinds of things, if we start to value them, which again has to do with I'm the value, not some job I have on a piece of paper that I'm offering you, Mr. or Mrs. Candidate or whatever, and same with the client. Oh, I have a candidate for you, and that's the only value I have. It's I have this perspective, sympathy, empathy, creativity. If we lean into those things more, I feel like that's value of all those things is going to go through the roof in the next few years as everything else becomes automated that can be automated. Well, there you go. Thank you. Anybody have any final closing comments, or shall we all go back to work? You're responsible.
I'm just delaying at this point.
We're procrastinating here, brother.
It's avoidance. It's what it is.
Straight avoidance.
That's it for us, I think.
Rob, you are on mute still, I think.
Oh, I just mute whenever I'm not talking. So yeah, I was going to say I have to run myself. I have to get into another meeting. So great being on.
Much appreciated.
Yes,
thank you for being here. Thank you for everyone who was listening and who will see online. If you have questions for any of us, please feel free to send us direct messages or comment on this thread. And I hope to see you all next week. Thanks, everyone.